Oh, we're live. Okay. Hi, welcome everyone. So folks from Europe is doing a semi-debate slash a questionnaire. I have 4 questions to ask you guys. So welcome. And I would like to introduce everyone first. Michael is a concerned citizen from the United Kingdom, and I would like you to further introduce yourself, if you please, Michael. Welcome to this group.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael. I'm a English teacher, and for the last 7 or 8 years I've been visiting Burma very regularly, teaching English in a small fishing village in Rakhine, and obviously was absolutely shocked by what's happened at the beginning of February, and in my small way want to do everything I can to try and return the country to the path it was on before it.
Wow, thank you very much, and welcome to this group. And next we have Marcus from NYC. No, sorry, yeah, NYC. Please further introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you for that, Sue. So my name's Marcus and I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I'm sure you can tell by the accent. So if you guys need me to rephrase anything, I know sometimes the Burma can be hard to understand. I'm one of the young activists from Down Under, and I am actually one of the founding members of the Shware Youth Collective, which is primarily what we are as a fundraising and activism group that does some like political commentary. We've been from the sidelines for about 6 months or so, but we went, obviously we were a small crew and we've gone public for this financial year. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here to talk about, obviously not because of this really horrible situation that's happening in Myanmar, but I'm happy that I'm able to hopefully get this to a more English speaking audience. Just to clarify, I'm a half Burmese, half Australian born. So that's me.
Wow, welcome. And I'm very excited to have you both. Next, I would like to invite Malhento from Poland. Would you like to introduce?
Yes, hello. Hello, hi everyone. I'm from Poland. I'm living in Warsaw. I'm studying sound engineering in Australia. My university teach me in Polish, so now I'm preparing Polish to study it. It was I think maybe 6 months ago that a lot of complicated situation was happening in my country. It was so sad and so horrible thing for me. At that time, I was busy to move the new apartment. When I saw those news from the Facebook, I was crying. And I called to other friends and I was crying with them. But I tried to be stabilized with those situation. Now I feel better, but the people from our country are still suffering, especially now they suffer again COVID-19 again. It appear again. It was disappear for I think maybe 2 months. Now it appear again and people suffer horribly. And I don't think the military code will not give back their power, and they will do to the end, I guess. So, however, I hope to the end of this horrible thing in my country, because I really love my country and I'm waiting to come back and to visit today. It is 2 years I can't come back to my country. First, there is a pandemic, and then it happened again. And pandemic is not end. I apply the visa, and here are my visa case will be end soon, and then I can come back to my country. Now, even my visa is ready, I can go back because of those situations. I really miss Asia and also Myanmar too. However, I hope to be happen good things in the future.
Wow, thank you very much, Malhento. So I would like to lastly introduce myself. My name is Dasu Din. I'm moderating this morning slash evening, depending on where you are in the globe. I come from Freedom, Justice, Equality for Myanmar team. And I'm very grateful that everyone is here. Okay, so starting off, my first question is, what is your perspective on the Myanmar coup / revolution? And Maung Lee Hein To already started with his perspective. So I would like to ask Marcus or Michael, whoever wants to chime in, just like put your hand up and just let me know. Who wants
I
to?
can go first.
Okay.
Obviously, coming from a very Western country in Australia, my initial reaction to this is like how barbaric, and it almost seems that it's not possible for humans to do this to each other. It's being, obviously, I condemn with every facet of my being, this horrific thing that's happening to my father's like people. I think when it comes to this, though, especially in my country, Australia, there isn't actually quite a lot of people that are even aware of this, which is, of course, if you go looking for something, you can find it. So when it comes to this military coup, often a lot of us are suffering in silence and being very frustrated. Because those who are very passionate and we are activists about this, of course, we're screaming from the rooftop. But the thing is, we're only heard in our neighborhoods, and there's so many neighborhoods where there is missing voices and everything about this horrific topic. And I think for my country specifically, it is so upsetting to know that it took them so long to publicly condemn what is happening in where it's like this should just be an instinctual reflex to condemn horrific things that happen to people. So personally, obviously I condemn it, like I mentioned, but I also, there's quite a lot of frustration in the greater public of people that aren't necessarily in the room when we're talking about lobbying and everything like that. So I would say that's the status of what like Australia is at the moment with the coup.
Right, thank you very much. Well, that's going to lead to the next question, but I would like Michael to also speak about how he feels about his perspective on the Myanmar coup.
So obviously, like everybody else, I was very shocked when it happened. I wasn't expecting it. My perspective on the coup and what's happening I know the UK, the Myanmar ambassador to the UK, and he in early March he defected to our side and condemned the coup and the violence, and as a result he's gone onto the junta hit list too, and through him have learned a little bit more perspective about what's happened. First of all, he now realizes that the military attaché in the embassy in London was actually was clearly aware of this coup before it happened, and his perspective, and he only realized it too late, was that this was it's like almost like a counter government, a military attaché with his own office in London that was actually watching the ambassador, watching the NLD, and had perspective that this was going to happen. That the reason that the coup happened is after the election in November, where the military did very badly. The military, or the senior generals in the military, have so little perspective on what's going on in the country that they were very shocked by the result. They couldn't believe the result. They thought the people liked them. How, I do not know, but they truly believed that the people liked them and that this result was somehow wrong and should be overturned. And that is how the whole thing started. They tried to get Aung San Suu Kyi to agree for Min Aung Hlaing to become president, and she quite rightly declined that offer, and then the coup became inevitable. They can't back down now. The reason they can't back down now is that Min Aung Hlaing and some of his other most evil generals are going to be prosecuted by the ICJ for genocide that happened even before this coup started. And so for them to back down, it means really that their lives are over. So we are in a total win or lose situation.
Sorry to interject. Can you explain more about the ICJ and for the listeners that might not know that term?
So the International Court of Justice, a UN Court of Justice, is prosecuting the senior generals in Myanmar. From what I understand, as I say, I'm a simple guy, so I may get these things wrong, but from what I understand, for genocide against the Rohingya in 2017. This is something that Aung San Suu Kyi was actually defending the Myanmar about, but this is proceeding. If they're found guilty of it, which I think people generally suspect that they are going to be found guilty of, then so far as the ICJ court is concerned, they will need to at least spend the rest of their lives in jail. So the perspective of this is almost as the UN has two sides, two faces to it, which is a disaster for the people of Myanmar. It has the ICJ face, which tells Min Aung Hlaing and his band of brothers that if they give in, that it's the end of the world for them. And then they have the face, which is to simply condemn people in the newspaper and in announcements, but with no teeth to it on the other side. So it just causes this thing to go on and on and on. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. It also leads up to the next question. And the next question is, how would you go about recognizing the NUG as the legitimate government of Myanmar? Do you have any suggestions? And I would like to start with Maunglay Haintok.
Hello. Yeah, I think a lot of countries recognize NUG as a legitimate government, but other countries don't want to allow, especially the ASEAN country. I don't know why. And they accept the meeting with the, Min Aung Hlaing, and then I don't know how they accept or not with NUG, but other countries, for example, US, especially US and Japan, especially recognize NUG as a legitimate government. I think it's very important things because NUG has a lot of things to do, especially now in COVID-19 case. They need to provide a lot of health care and a lot of things to provide the citizen. For example, a lot of citizens suffer COVID-19 and they are lack of oxygen, and NUG need to support them. But the military corps is preventing, they are doing things. So I'm afraid how they can do it. So a lot of countries need to recognize the NUG as a legitimate government so they can do more things. I think it's a little important, very important thing to be a legitimate government. Fortunately, a lot of countries recognize it, especially from, like I said, US and Japan, they recognize it. But NUG is now hiding because of this military corps, so they can do effectively. If they can hide, they can have people, especially now situation, because as I said, this COVID-19 case, a lot of people are dying without the lack of oxygen. So they need a lot of oxygen support. This is the very, very simple one. And NUG also need to do a lot of things. Now the country is destroying because a lot of people redeem or they withdraw their money from the bank. So the economy is now totally broke down. The government, we need a government to fix it, not the military corps. Like we need a democratic government, so we need that government to fix the situation of our country. So it's very important thing to be the legitimate government of our country.
Thank you very much. So does Marcus Marcus, do you have anything to speak about Australia?
Yeah, of course, I can't speak for like the whole of Australia, but I think that, like Michael, I think it's really important to stand out that we're all just humble individuals, regardless of what our backgrounds are. So it's really hard sometimes to make even a dent to this Goliath of a situation. I think in regards to my government, like publicly legitimizing, like, you know, acknowledging the legitimacy of NUG, I feel like that is like step 3 or 4 in the process. And unfortunately, my country personally is just at the starting stage of 1 and 2, meaning that, of course, yes, that is exactly what we want. Like, of course, I would want my country to speak out proud and be like, oh, regardless if it was NUG or any other acronym, anyone that absolutely supports democracy should be in the forefront of this. They fought so hard for this. We're talking about more than 5 decades worth of fighting for democracy, way more than that, but that's just like what for the Western perspective of what we're aware of. So yeah, no, it is. Of course, we need to publicly acknowledge that the NUG is what the people do want, regardless if that means that there isn't a second option, third option, fourth option that is like this power, like a power collective of a government group. But with that, I think that the biggest problem that it is in Australia is that we're actually struggling to break the cultural barrier of educating people of a different ethnicity. Of course, we have lovely members who are not necessarily from Myanmar descent, who are very passionate, who have been able to see our beautiful people, our country, taste our foods, hear our music. So of course, it's really easy for them to be like, oh, I was just there, I just did a backpacking tour. It was absolutely amazing. And for them to see these cities lit on fire, I mean, let alone they don't have Wi-Fi. Just so obviously some people watching this might not know, because we will be sharing this on my platform. Like, no electricity, no Wi-Fi, no running water is just the beginning of it. Villages lit on fire, absolutely huge sexual assault, so much somber things that are happening that it just doesn't get to our media, because obviously, the Myanmar population, especially in my state, is only about 19,000 people, according to census. So forgive me if it's a little bit outdated. But yeah, no, so we don't have a lot of momentum in regards to getting a lot of our people's voices heard by the more Anglo or even other nationalities in Australia. So that's very frustrating. So I feel like for us, of course, we want them to do step 4 and really, really publicly say that this is a legitimate group, because that's what the people want. But we're still at the education stage and the wide publicity stage. So we're actually quite a bit behind all our fellow brothers and sisters in other nations. That's in the public. Behind closed doors, of course, there's lobbying. And I really want to instill a lot of confidence that there is things happening behind closed doors. But with our media, in the grand scheme of things, obviously we're a little bit stagnant at the moment. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, of course, that's what we want, but the status at the moment is a little bit unfortunate to report on.
So just to recap, are you saying that it's very difficult to raise awareness because there's a very small population in Australia? And is there anything that you can reveal that's like in the works that you say is happening in the background?
Yeah, of course. So obviously everything is a bit private, but there's lots of talks and lots of brainstorming. Obviously, like, I'm not at liberty to give specifics, but I'm sure that everyone can brainstorm of like what's logical for a government to do when they don't want someone in power, and people can fill in the blanks there. If they're educated enough, they can always. I'm more than happy to post a statement that my government has released on what their plan is, and people can research in their own time. But yeah, no, I think that for us, we are sorry, like Sue, to go back to it, but I think the biggest issue with my community is that there's a humongous language barrier for quite a lot of us, and we are very diverse. So obviously there's like 132 different nationalities of Myanmar. So yeah, we're really struggling to, although all of us have the same belief, I wouldn't necessarily say that all of our groups are unified. So that being said, even though we have a small population, there are other small ethnicities that have united and they have overcome things. So I think with if we changed a couple of different things, we could definitely kick some goals. It's just a matter of us unifying, kicking those goals.
Okay, thank you so much. That clarifies sorry. I spaced out. That clarifies the question. Moving on to Michael, do you have a response about your country?
Yes, I do, and I'm afraid you're not going to like the answer. And while I would like the NUG to be recognised, it's never going to happen in the UK. The UK have an important embassy in Yangon, and it's very important to the UK that that remains open. It's also very important to the people in Myanmar because that embassy does a lot of good. And if they recognise the NUG, that the embassy will close. And the UK government, whether you like it or don't like it, has a record of not going out and recognising a government like the NUG because it wants to continue to work inside the country. Added to that, what they will say is well, the NUG government is largely based outside of Myanmar, and it isn't actually the elected government itself. It's a shadow government, and it will never happen. The best thing that we can hope for is that the British government doesn't recognise junta. And my fear is actually they're going to by mistake recognise the junta. And the way they're going to recognise the junta is by appointing a new ambassador. And there are rumours that he has been chosen and that there is a secret agreement going on where the British ambassador in Yangon will change in a few months' time. And at the same time that he changes, we will allow a new man to come to London representing the military government. And that is something that I'm very concerned about and that I think we should be voicing our opposition to as loudly as we can. And it's something that I'm working on. But I think it'll never happen, I'm afraid.
Thank you for your candor. I know that that's ideally what most people in Myanmar want, and people from people with associations with the revolution would like. Personally speaking, for me in the US, we're working closely with Senator Ben Cardin from Maryland, and he's right now writing the Burma bill. And we're as activists putting our demands of what we want. I don't know if it's going to be added into the bill, but one of the demands is for Chevron to stop financially supporting the Myanmar military junta. I know that we only did 2 protests, and the Chevron lobbyist group relocated and have not been found, even on LinkedIn. Craig Hall. So that's happening, and slowly, hopefully trying to, the reason why personally I feel that that recognition is powerful is because I feel like the NUG is one of the few unifying factors of the whole country, of the resistance. Myanmar has not been united in a long time, and it's from the art of war of the military being divisive and dividing all of the tribal indigenous nations against each other for resources. So anyways, sorry, I'm going to go back to being moderator. And the next question is, do you think the current activists that are protesting in your respective country is protesting with the appropriate approach and awareness and solidarity? Would you like to see more done or less done, or anything? Okay, going to Marcus because he raised his hand.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I know that I'm talking a lot. I hope that this does reach quite a large audience. I think that the Myanmar people that are in Victoria and the whole of Australia, in Sydney and Perth and Brisbane, of course, we are extremely passionate. However, in my home state of Victoria, I would say that about 80% or more of our demonstrations that activists have been doing for 6 months have only been in Burma. So they have only been in Burmese. It's very hard as someone who is Australian, that does have empathy for this movement, to step up and tell our elders that this is not necessarily the best solution. I'm not saying that we shouldn't necessarily use Burmese, because of course that's the language of their people, but you have to, like, it's very much they're chanting to deaf ears because people can't understand them. Even our posters and that are, this is just like a fundamental thing that is one of the biggest hurdles that there is in Victoria, let alone that you are 100% correct. There is systemic repression of these minorities. They don't even speak Burmese in some cases. Their second language is English. They speak their dialect of where they grew up. They migrated to Australia or UK or Canada or wherever the go is, and they speak English. So I think that just the loudest voices are not necessarily the most accurate with what my particular group is, as in like my particular state. Which is extremely frustrating. We have people that obviously, I hope you guys are aware, Australia itself is not innocent when it comes to racial prejudice. And we have people that are slurring when they hear us chant in Burmese, go back to where you're from. They don't even understand what we are protesting about because they are so desensitized to the fact that there's people just, chanting in a foreign language. So I think that our biggest thing that will help my specific state that I hope is achieved is that they understand that they need to speak in English first. See what I'm talking about like you guys are talking like step 3 and 4, where it's like I'm talking something fundamental that has worked in America, has worked in Canada. There's so many, like there's people in photos, but what you don't know is the people surrounding that are out of the frame that actually don't know what the purpose of it is. So yeah, I think that that's probably when we are definitely a passionate group of people. I wouldn't necessarily say that our attempts have been successful just because of that language barrier.
I agree with you. In the US, it's been really hard. There are English speakers. I'm one of 4, and one of like 2 women. So yeah. And it is, I think also speaking in Burmese is not accessible to other indigenous nations. I do agree with that. Yeah, that's very difficult. I think it's two-pronged because when you move from your country, people tend to stick in like ethnic enclaves because it's safer.
Of course.
And so like when people are like, I know you understand, but I'm just speaking in general to the public. Yeah, it's harder. So I think that it's more cathartic for them. And I think it's not really meeting the purpose of what they're trying to do, which is have outside access. For them, I think, like many others that I've seen in the US, they're like, oh my God, this is happening again. And rape and murder, genocide, children dying, elders being choked to death, women being stomped in their vaginas, like all of these things are still happening. And so they're just yelling in the language that they're most passionate in. And I totally have empathy for that. But yes, it is not effective. And I agree with you, Marcus. So I would like to go to Nile Hain Do. Do you have any perspective on Poland's activism scene?
I don't see any attributes because we have just only few people in Poland. There are other protests from Belarus and Ukrainian because their country also has a war in now. The Polish government also make some restricted rule for protester. So that's why there is any protester for Burma, Myanmar. Because we already have a protester from the Belarus because Belarus has a like situation like my country. So they make a protest at the Warsaw, maybe in Old Town. I saw them a few weeks ago. And Polish government make some restricted rule for them, and there would be a little complicated situation with them too. So sadly, we don't have any protester in Poland now. But some people make a protest from online, Zoom meeting or something like that. But one of my friends, a lot of my friends from Poland, Polish people know about our country's situation, and they are so surprised and they are so scared about the situation. And also one of my roommate, and he is from he is from Ukraine, and he was so surprised because in their country, for the protest, they just arrest them and then the protesters are in the jail and they don't torture. But in our country, they are tortured and they kill and they got murdered. So they were so surprised. And the amount of people was dying is more than their country. So they were so surprised. And one of my Polish friends was know about my country because the protesting sign from our country is like this. So they recognize about that, and Polish government might be concerned about that too, but it is too slow.
Thank you for your input about Poland.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that there's not that many people, but I think you're doing a great job by like participating online. I appreciate you. Michael, do you have any perspective?
The first thing I'd say is I'm the only speaker that isn't Burmese, or half. I'm the only speaker without Burmese blood, and one thing that I don't never like seeing during this revolution is when you get British or Americans who are not Burmese at all telling the Burmese how they should behave and what they should say and what they should think. We can't begin to understand what it feels for you. And I think it's insulting that we should tell you what the answer is and how you should behave. So I find this quite a difficult question to answer. Most of my contacts with people who are activists are actually not in the UK. It's not because there aren't activists in the UK. It's just that's what I see, and I see almost always young women leading everything. And what they're doing is wonderful. It tends to be in CDM education. The only difficulty you have is after months and months and months of it. These are women who are normally outside the country with family inside the country. They're terrified. They can't sleep like none of us can. And after months, there are real mental health issues, and that many of them are deeply depressed. And I think that can, over time, when you get into that kind of mood, it can create divisions because your mind's not together. And the really important thing is, which Myanmar seems to be doing such a wonderful job of, is everybody needs to stick together and to remember that they're on the same side. Because one thing that this coup has brought is bringing people of all kinds together. And that when we win, I do hope that we remember that it's young women, it's ethnic minorities that were such a large part of this successful activism. And I do hope that the new government recognizes that and that we see more ethnic people and young women in it. If there's one thing within the UK, and again, I almost didn't want to say it because I'm not Burmese, is I do know the ambassador to the Burmese ambassador to the UK. I know that he was once upon a time a military figure, and that a lot of people may be suspicious of opening their arms to someone like that. But if someone does defect to your side, he and I can tell you he really has. There's no two sides to this. I think people should be a little bit more welcoming than they have been, for two reasons. One, he could be useful to the side, to your side, and secondly, the message you give to other ambassadors in other countries that may also have been a little bit slow to defect is don't defect because the other side won't support you. And so all I would say from the UK perspective is I feel that's a little bit more unity that I would love to see.
Thank you for your input. I know there's been defectors in the embassy in DC, and there has been 6 defectors. And, one person, their daughter is one of the leaders, and she's been outside the embassy trying to plead with them, saying that I know you, because she does, and trying to garner empathy. And I think that empathy is a great, not only like the golden rule is great, but it's a great tool to gain other people to your side. So I agree with you. Yeah, I'm gonna go to the next question, unless anybody else has anything to add.
I just wanted to clarify, just because Michael did bring up a fantastic point about how important our female members of our activism has been. I think I just wanted to clarify that our community is unified and we are led by women as well. It's just that everyone can always do better. And that's not an individual situation or anything like that. I just wanted to clarify that I think it's for me, witnessing all these women step up and all these minorities step up is so, of course, that's how we can make a movement. That's how we can make change, it's very much not, although there might be necessarily a person, like a man that is the head of the movement or something ridiculous like that, very much it is the minorities and the women that are the neck, that where they go, very much everything will follow, because when we are unified, that's how we get movement and success. And I just wanted to clarify that just because I don't think that was very clear when I was talking before, that very much that it is the same in Australia, that women and minorities are very much leading a lot of the work that is happening in Australia.
Thank you for your clarification. Also, with women activists, I do understand that there's a lot of, within our culture, within the Burmese culture and other indigenous nations cultures, there's a lot of internalized sexism. There's a lot of internalized racism and things that have been passed down from colonization era, from the British to the Japanese. There's a lot of skin bleaching. There's so many different things. And then there's this coup. And so everyone's trying to get together. And so there's going to be all of these nuances that, we do need to work on to be better. It doesn't mean that we're not trying to be united and we're not trying to uplift and try to help our people. But I think it is natural to have, and I think it's great to call out things that are not working so that we can be more efficient. And I know, that can sometimes butt heads with egos, but I think if our goal is liberation and helping people that are enduring genocide, then I think naturally, these frictions that are minor will dispel themselves. Okay, so can I move? I'm going to move on to the next question. The next question is the second to last question. So for Total and Chevron, they took over it took them over 3 months to postpone their financial partnership with the Myanmar military junta. Your respective governments have condemned the military coup. Why do you think there's still partnership, if there is partnership, with the military junta? I know that question sounds a little bit repetitive, but I guess it's more geared towards like financial support. Um, so does anybody want to take it away? Raise your hand if you want to start first.
Shall I
I
have
can start. Yeah, go, Michael, please, because I've started first a few times. Thank you.
not an area where I'm an expert in. Total is a French company and Chevron is a US company. So the UK is less involved in this. I do understand that there were some partial moves. I think the moves were made more to appear they've done a lot rather than them actually having done a lot. And so the military government are still receiving huge amounts of money from Total and from Chevron. Total and Chevron have said that they can't break these contracts because it would break in international law. I don't think it. I don't see why they couldn't put this money into an escrow account. But again, this isn't talked about. One thing I do understand is that if the French government were to change the law to make it impossible for Total to carry out this contract, that would give an excuse for Total to cease providing the money to the junta. And so that is an angle that perhaps activists should push. The second angle that sometimes gets pushed is that the gas that Total and Chevron supply to Thailand is vital. It's a huge percentage of Thailand's gas supply, and that they don't want to interrupt that, which all raises questions of, well, what does Thailand as a member of ASEAN doing for Myanmar? Yes, I think that this is an extremely important part. Added to not just these two, there is a Japanese jet fuel company that is continuing to supply jet fuel to the Myanmar government, and we know what that's used for. And the Norwegian Central Bank is actually a major shareholder in one of the companies that supplies jet fuel to Myanmar. So it's more than just Total and Chevron. I think a vital way to weaken the military government is to go at these major sources of revenue to them, or of ammunition or fuel to them, provided by Western governments, that we should be able to stop, but we don't. It doesn't seem to be happening.
And I think as constituents of your respective countries in the first world, I think that you have the power to raise your voice about it. And hopefully that is heard by the UK, especially, like as Michael was saying. Can I have a response from Manlia Heinto about this regarding Poland?
Regarding Poland, it's a little difficult to say because Poland and Myanmar has a very few connection between these two countries. I heard about one of my friends from Poland. His friend has a maybe hotel or restaurant is in Burma. When I meet with him next time, I will ask him about that one too. He said his friend has a hotel and restaurant in Myanmar. It's a Polish restaurant. No, not Polish restaurant. I think it's a kind of hotel and restaurants. And then he is still opening or no? I'm a little curious about that. I know about this thing with Poland and Burma is connecting. For the other company, a lot of companies are leaving from Myanmar because of this situation. So I think they are waiting to the stable situation, or maybe they might leave soon now, or maybe they can be stay in our country. Some people hope that this situation will be end sooner, and some people think they might happen more wars. So a lot of people are staying and some people are leaving. For example, Telenor company is leaving from our country. This is the big example of our, because it's the operator, and this is the biggest operator in Myanmar too. now it is leaving from my country because of this situation. For the Poland company, I think that restaurants and maybe some school in our country, they are connected with Myanmar. And I heard about one thing, a lot of international students, especially Burmese students, got rejected their scholarship because of this situation. So I think it is a little hard to say with Poland because we have a very, very few connection with Poland and Myanmar. That's all.
Thank you very much, Malnehela, for your response. Marcus, would you like to say anything about Australia?
Yeah, definitely. I think unlike Poland, there are quite a lot of businesses that are dealing with Myanmar still, which is so awful. Of course, I know that you guys were mentioning Chevron as well, but I think the biggest one from the Australian perspective is a company called Woodside, which was an energy company that was dealing from Perth. I think that initially what happens was, I'm sure you guys are all aware of like pink ribboning and everything like that, about how they portray that we condemn these actions and everything like that in May. And then as their contracts are still going on, they're still continuing the work. So it's very frustrating. I'm sure that they're publicly saying that, oh, we're in the process of, we're limited by contracts. There's so many barriers that are in our way. But I think that they're very, very invisible barriers in the sense of, I don't think that our Australian people realize that as a consumer, as a voice, as a part of us, we actually have quite a lot of collective power, where it's, all these companies just need is a little bit of, I don't want to say bad press, I just want to say accurate press. And then hopefully that they can publicly, more than just condemn, absolutely separate themselves from these horrific things. I know that these massive corporations, that they've been dealing since everything opened up about 6 years ago, especially when it comes to energy or I think that there's a company called Woodside in Perth that was, they said that they weren't really working with them or that they were going to stop working with them. I know that in regards to like a press, now what we're talking about modern, like where we are right now into July, there hasn't actually been, like there's still work going on. There's still a tether there. Also, another thing with that is one of the top 4 banks in Australia is ANZ, and there's actually quite a lot of companies that are affiliated through that way. There's definitely a lot of connections that, we can scream until the house comes down, but if we don't unify as a people and condemn them as the Australian, people that are citizens of Australia, saying we don't want these powerhouse energy companies to support these horrific things, because if that was happening here, we wouldn't support them. So why would we support it if it's happening in Myanmar? We might have had like a small win, but in regards to them publicly taking a step back from saying that they were going to financially support. But at the end of the day, this movement is money will make things move. Unfortunately, our side, we could say, even though there's different facets and everything like that, they need funds, and we don't have these physical landmarks or resources or contracts for them to have incomes. I think a lot of us are relying on other government supports like donations and funding and humanitarian aid and everything like that. I don't even want to begin what the recent COVID outbreak is going to be like, because we haven't even seen the reaction of everything now. I think it's only been about 2 weeks since the outbreak has absolutely exploded in Yangon. So yeah, definitely. I think what I hope is that we can unify as a people and publicly condemn all of these companies that are financially supporting the junta, and hopefully that will impact it. But very much the strategy in Australia is that we have to burn the wick at both ends. We can't do this strategy or this strategy. It has to be a multifaceted or attempt at making people. We need to educate people, as well as, while educating them, use their voices to help us, and also behind closed doors do lots of lobbying, so that from a government perspective, we can also do that. I know that the Australian government was using a shield of like one of our members that were affiliated with Aung San Suu Kyi being locked up, and I don't want to speak or begin to even speak about mentioning his name or his family or anything like that, because I'd hate to create a big mess with that, Masu. But I think that very much Australia is, they'll say like maybe like 3 good sentences and then silence speaks bucket loads. That there's not a lot of doing the talk. There's lots of just a little bit of like, you know, there's not a lot of doing the walk. There's a little bit of talk is what I meant to say.
I think you hit a bunch of like amazing points. And also, you know, where money goes, that's, you know, that's the money when Michael was talking about the jet fuels or the jets, right? If there's like money for that, like that's where there's aerial attacks. There's people being bombed in Kachin and other places, you know, there's like, you know, there's in Germany when they're printing money, or when they're like sending money paper into Myanmar. So the military is printing new money, military money, you know, and destabilizing furthermore the economy. Like that's a direct link. And so what people, I want people to understand that there's, you know, like there's a real reason why stopping financial resources or dealings with the military is very important. And I think both of you hit that on the nail. Also, you segued perfectly into the last question about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before we answer those questions, there's just one more thing I'd love to say, if we've got time, is in terms of this money talks, that there is a strategy which I think is worth following along those lines to persuade the Chevrons, the Woodsides, and the Texacos to think again, which is to attack their shareholders, because today what they call ESG is very fashionable. People want to invest in socially responsible businesses, or they want to be seen to invest in socially responsible businesses. They will happily invest in Texaco and Chevron if they're not embarrassed to do so. But another way is rather than to attack Texaco and Chevron, it's to have a look and see who their largest shareholders are, because who they are will often surprise you. And then to ask them from a socially responsible investing perspective, why do they own shares in this company that does this? And that can make these companies think again, because if they lose these shareholders, then their share price falls. And the managements of these companies are largely remunerated on how well their shares do. So if their shares start doing badly, it tends to change their strategy very quickly.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I think that's a great strategy. Thank you, Michael. And going into the last question that Marcus touched on about COVID, would you like to say more, or would you like to start talking about the third wave that has been happening in all of South Asia, but because there's a military coup and genocide going on in Myanmar, it's happening from both ends. So I would like to hear both of your perspectives. Whoever would like to start.
I can go, just obviously because I segued into it. I think that the wave that's happening right now, a lot of our people, our contacts and everything like that in Burma are specifically in Yangon. And I think that one of the most horrific things about it is that, I mean, obviously in Southeast Asia, electricity is not even dependable at the best of times. So they have a lot of generators and everything like that, but adding in the flavor of this horrific military coup, people, you know, getting shot or people going missing, like a lot of in between, like you can't even visit your family. They're in the sheer amount of people that are reporting to be positive, they get sent home. So people aren't getting tested. So then there's ambiguity in the population. So then they're going on and spreading it to their groups and everything like that. And they don't trust the cybersecurity that's happening, Masu. So they're all meeting in person. And because they don't have a negative response, they're all spreading it to each other. So it is awful. It's not just one aspect that is this horrific virus is just putting on this already multifaceted, horrific situation. And yeah, it's just another contributing factor to why we have been a little bit stagnant to whatever it is. So I think that when it comes to this, I don't even think that they would even give any vaccines or anything like that to people, just because the junta is in charge. And if there was ever going to be something where they could, you know, trade medicine or in the near future, of course they're not going to give it to people that don't want them to be in power. So that's even another variable that is really, really astounding. I know my auntie personally is in a hospital right now, and there's about like 40 people that come in every single day. They get tested, they have to go back home. It's not like in Western countries where you get it the same day or anything like that. We're talking, it takes a long time for them to get the positive test result. And while this is going on, they don't have the luxury of staying at home and isolating. They need to get food for their allotment, like where they live and everything like that. So it is awful. It is. I don't want people to think that it is hopeless, because my hopes is that we can get some humanitarian aid in because of this and use COVID as a sort of means to bunny hop and get some international assistance. Because this is like, Australia is probably not even the best nation necessarily to do that, because we're even not even one of the most vaccinated countries in out of first world countries. So it is awful to hear what is happening, adding another layer to an already big mess.
Thank you. And also, I would like to add that the AstraZeneca shot is it's out. So like people, not just in Yangon, but like in other parts of Myanmar, are if they are offered vaccines, there's a Chinese vaccine, right? And people are sketched out about receiving a vaccine, not only from the military, but also from China, because China is in collusion and actively working with the Myanmar military and providing weapons, providing cyber attack, and like all these other things. So yeah, that's just an ad. Michael, would you like to comment about COVID?
Well, it's just a disaster. It's a country where there's been a coup, which has been a total and utter disaster. But because the generals can't admit defeat, in any normal coup, they would have to say by now, well, this didn't go very well. We now have a country which is not ruled by anybody, and so there's no healthcare system, there's no system of anything, and so for the poor people of the country, it's a disaster. You would hope that the governments of China and Thailand would realize that this healthcare disaster in Myanmar is going to mean that they will have healthcare disasters too, because they share wide borders. But you've seen no sign of that sort of sense. My fear in terms of humanitarian aid is that the military will act in exactly the same way with COVID as they did with Nargis in 2007. Is they will try to prevent the aid, and any aid that does get in, they will just use for themselves. So I'm not hopeful at all. And indeed, when I talk to my students, their comment is, we're worried about we're worried about COVID, but to be honest, we're much more worried about how we're going to eat, which just shows you that it is just the most horrific situation, and it's just problem upon problem. And I don't know. Added to the fact that the Chinese vaccine, I understand in Thailand that they've decided that the Sinovac vaccine doesn't work, and so healthcare workers who were given that vaccine are now going to be given the AstraZeneca vaccine instead, because with the Delta variant, the Sinovac vaccine actually isn't very effective.
Yeah, it's very complicated, and things are stacking up on top of each other for sure. You know, like there is going to be overflow into Thailand and into China. So it doesn't make any logical sense. And yeah, like you said with Nargis, the junta just took the aid for themselves and blocked Red Cross aid. And you know, like for example, my uncle Ujotu, he's currently on the run, but before he was on the run, he was responsible for providing free funeral service for the whole country of millions of people, providing, because it's a health risk to have just bodies just laying out and decomposing and no one knowing what to do with it and not having a space for burial or cremation. Free ambulance services, free like fire services. Now all of these services are gone because he's on the run, and the other emergency workers, when they do help victims of the junta that luckily get to escape without a headshot or whatever it is, they also get brutally attacked, some murdered, and then the person that's inside their ambulance also gets killed or taken, and their body disappears. And then there's sometimes when you, if the family members have enough money to bribe, you know, then they can get the body back with missing organs that is suspected to be sold to China on the black market, which is insane to me. So like so that is happening, COVID's happening, food shortages definitely happening. If there's no electricity, there's less access to refrigeration. So you need to continuously go outside to markets and interact with people. So that's very dire. And, you know, everything is, you know, shutting down, and people that have enough saved are able to survive. But the very, very marginalized, economically not sound people are the ones that are suffering the most on both ends. And so, yeah, but I don't want to leave this conversation on a very depressing note. I do believe that that we can win if we put enough effort to it. And I really think everyone is trying, and I'm just trying to pull on the heartstrings of the people that are listening, and to empower folks, especially if you live in a first world country. You know, their voice has a lot of power. And I would like to thank you both for attending. I know the other student from Poland, he had to leave, so didn't get a chance to say goodbye. But I would like to thank you both for being a part of this. Is there any closing statements you guys would like to make?
I just wanted to say, if there was any Australians out there specifically that feel passionate about this cause, that know how important democracy is to our own country, please do not feel that because you are separated by blood, that means that we're separated by our journey together. There is so much me, and we need we. So we need to unify, we need to become together. Even if you are from Myanmar and you are a minority that might not have a lot of representation, please feel free to reach out to our group, and we will find people that do have your ethnicity. None of us are alone. Even if you are separated by distance or anything like that, our activism nowadays is digital, and we are here. Look at us right now, America, UK, Australia, powerhouses in the world of this community. So even if we are a small population in our own states and regions of our own countries, together we are strong, together we are here for the people of Myanmar, and we will win. It might not be tomorrow, but we will fight until we win, because us as a people will not give up.
Thank you, Marcus. Michael, would you like to say anything for the closing statement?
Well, I think Thetsu Tin, one thing that I have noticed through this awful year is Burmese patriotism. So in Britain, we see patriotism, and it's often quite an ugly, racist sort of patriotism, not something that I condone or admire in any way. But in Myanmar, we've seen a different kind of patriotism. It's a patriotism that is all based on togetherness, bravery, and huge respect for individuals, from no matter what their creed or their race. And this is something that's wonderful to see. And it's that sort of patriotism which actually convinces me that in the end, we are going to win, because that sort of patriotism is unbeatable.
Very powerful statements from you both. And thank you both very much for attending and answering these questions. I'm very honored.
Well, thank you too.
No, thank you, Sue, for moderating.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to close this meeting, dialogue, I don't know what to call it, conversation. Thank you very much.